We suffer from denying the truth, but so did they.
As I read all of it, some big questions are inescapable. Are Bronwyn's writings the artefacts of a woman looking back on the 31 years of her life to that moment? A woman looking forward with her 2 girls to a happier, brighter future as a newly single mum, finally freed of the shackles and sadness she felt in an intolerable marriage to John.
I was surrounded by hate and abuse in various ways as a child, and am determined not to allow this to happen to my girls or myself ever again. No one will ever intimidate me again, nor will I allow anyone to force their opinions onto me, as this can cause damage to myself as well as my children. If love means not being trusted to be yourself, or thinking that everyone is out to own you, paranoia, then it is not my idea of happiness.
Or are they the nuanced words of a woman who is writing with a plan to leave something personal and heartfelt behind for her loved ones? When Bronwyn wrote in her notepad in 1993, was she intending to imminently and dramatically change everything by leaving everyone who loved her, including her daughters? Was she intending to vanish without explanation and never see or speak to them or anyone else she knew again?
Everyone has both good and bad, and I've confronted the bad in myself and realized I am human. We all make mistakes. I can forgive myself and will now live with my memories in peace. I will always remember the people I meet. I will be fine now. A little break for a few weeks and everyone will see the old me. Look out.
Over months of visits to Lennox, nearby towns and villages, and the city in which she grew up, Sydney, I'm talking to people who knew Bronwyn and seeking answers to these questions and more. Talking to anyone who might shed light on what happened to Bronwyn on the night of May 16, 1993, when John was the last person to see her at the home in Sandstone Crescent. In this enclave worshipped by dedicated surfers and made affluent by sea change property owners, people who know more than they've let on before about Bronwyn's fate are coming forward. Former police detectives are sharing information with me. Many hundreds of pages of evidence are being scrutinised for clues. Here's one example. On April 2, 1993, Doreen Strong from the Ballina Byron Family Support Service made a handwritten diary note about the first of several contacts with the newly single Bronwyn from Lennox Head.
Bronwyn Winfield, left husband 10 days ago. Emotional violence, custody threats, been to solicitor. Received advice regarding custody. Feels better but needs support. We are to call Monday regarding availability of appointment.
Bronwyn saw 3 different solicitors after her separation from John on March 21, 1993. She sought advice about her rights in a planned property settlement with John, an intended division of their assets. The solicitor she had decided to stay with, Chris McDevitt, was based in the nearby town of Lismore. Bronwyn's next appointment in his office there was scheduled for Monday, May 17. I have a copy of a page from her notepad with the time Bronwyn jotted down for the Monday meeting with Chris McDevitt, 11 a.m. But Bronwyn disappeared the night before, Sunday, May 16, 1993. And as she didn't meet her solicitor or contact him ever again to make another appointment, the plans that had been made for divorce and the sale of the house were quietly shelved. John kept his castle on Sandstone Crescent. This podcast is made possible by subscribers to The Australian and our principal sponsor, Harvey Norman. For over 6 years, Harvey Norman has been a key partner in my investigative podcasts such as The Teacher's Pet and The Teacher's Trial, The Night Driver, and Shandy's Story. I'm proud to have the support of Harvey Norman and its CEO, Katie Page, for our investigative journalism on cold cases that we believe can be solved. For more information on this podcast, go to theaustralian.com.au.
The Australian All Access sale is on. Uncover the news that shapes your world for $1 a week for the first 8 weeks. Minimum cost $4. Hurry, sale ends soon. Subscribe at theaustralian.com.au. New customers only. T's and C's apply.
South on Ballina Street. In 700 metres at the roundabout, take the second exit onto North Creek Road.
A good wave is peeling this sunny afternoon. Board riders are carving across the face of swollen waves at a beach known as Boulders. Boulders Beach is still John Winfield's favourite location when he paddles out for a wave. Bronwyn's husband didn't leave Lennox Head after she vanished. But why would he? John has always emphatically denied wrongdoing. In 2002, a senior coroner made a formal finding that Bronwyn was dead, and he ended an inquest which had traversed a large amount of evidence over 5 days of hearings in a courtroom in Lismore. More importantly, the senior coroner recommended to the Director of Public Prosecutions in New South Wales that a known person, Bronwyn's husband John Winfield, should be prosecuted over her alleged murder. But the DPP firmly refused to prosecute.
I wish to advise that after careful consideration of the matter referred to him by the coroner and following further investigation, the Director of Public Prosecutions is not satisfied that there is sufficient evidence to lay any charge against Jonathan Winfield at this time.
The prosecuting agency confirmed its decision in a letter of just one sentence. The letter went to the police who had re-investigated Bronwyn's case for the inquest. Bronwyn's brother, Andy Reid, and his wife, Michelle, were astonished. They wrote to the office of the DPP in early 2003.
We are writing to you on behalf of ourselves and the Reid family to formally request a full explanation as to why the Crown Prosecutor in Lismore and the Director of Public Prosecutions in Sydney have decided there is not sufficient evidence to lay charge against Mr. Jonathan Winfield.
We feel that at the very least, we deserve better than a line or two informing us of this decision. It has taken 10 long years to get the case to this point, and we would appreciate a full written response to this matter at your earliest convenience.
No doubt you are aware that we are completely dissatisfied at the decision and have already taken steps to investigate the matter further through political and departmental channels.
The Director of Public Prosecutions in New South Wales at that time, Nicholas Cowdery, replied to Andy Reid.
The disappearance of your sister Bronwyn Winfield in May 1993 has no doubt caused much grief to you and your family, and I offer my sympathies. My advice to police and the coroner, after very careful consideration of all the evidence presently available, is that there is not sufficient evidence to charge Jonathan Winfield or any other person. Bronwyn's disappearance was not reported to the police for 2 weeks and was initially treated as a missing person inquiry. By the time it was dealt with as a possible homicide, years had passed and any potential scientific evidence was long gone. There is no body and no known cause of death. While Jonathan Winfield is the last known person to have seen her alive, there is no evidence that he killed her or had any role in her disappearance. Suspicion cannot be substitution for evidence.
John has never been charged with any offence in relation to his missing wife. John suggested to police that Bronwyn had left to start a new life with a new identity, probably with money from, in John's words, a wealthy sugar daddy. But nobody has ever reported having seen her. And in the 2 decades since Nicholas Cowdery wrote that letter in 2003, there's still no body. Behind his back, Lennox locals who know the story of Bronwyn Winfield scoff at John's version. I was on assignment and rushing from one interview to the next in Sydney when I heard her name for the first time. It was December 2017. Bronwyn Joy Winfield had been missing for 24 years by then. She became real for me during my podcast investigation into the 1982 disappearance of another missing woman, Lynette Joy Dawson. At the request of Lynn's family, we now refer to her by her maiden name. She's Lynette Sims. It was a hot and humid afternoon, just a week before Christmas 2017, and I had spent several hours talking to Lynn's friend, Julie Andrew, in her home near the heart of Sydney. Julie made a powerful impression that day. 6 months later, when the podcast had a name, The Teacher's Pet, and episodes started to come out, listeners heard Julie's commitment to justice for Lynn. They heard her unwavering certainty about Lynn's fate at the hands of her husband, Chris Dawson.
The best way to dispose of a body when you live in the bush is to put it in the bush. And that's what I think he did on the Friday night. I'm sorrowful. I lost a dear friend and I've carried it for years. And I miss her every day. I just want justice. And I'd love her little girls to know she didn't leave them. She was taken away from them by the person who was supposed to protect her.
I drove away from the interview in Julie's terrace house with my friend Rebecca Hazel. We headed west to meet Carl Milovanovich, a retired Deputy State Coroner of New South Wales.
Come in, I'll get you out of the heat. We're very sorry, we just realised when we pulled up that we didn't bring a bottle of wine, a cake, anything.
No, we've got that organised. Come upstairs, please. Straight up the stairs.
Carl had agreed to talk to me for my podcast investigation back then about Lynn's case. He remembered in 14 years before Carl met me at his home, he had led an exhaustive coronial investigation. Carl watched and heard numerous witnesses give evidence under oath in a courtroom in Sydney. These witnesses recalled Lynn and Chris, their Northern Beaches home, the marriage, and a schoolgirl we'll call JC. There were many who were adamant that Lynn would never have voluntarily left her two girls, who were just 4 and 2 at the time. Among the witnesses were Lynn's friends and family who knew her as an utterly devoted mother and wife, and sister and daughter. All were questioned under oath in the inquest by a police officer with expertise as a lawyer, Matt Fordham. He had done a lot of work to ensure the police brief of evidence was very solid. A highly committed Northern Beaches detective called Damien Loon was sure that Chris Dawson had killed Lynn. Damien had been investigating the case off and on for several years, and his work comprised most of the police brief of evidence. Chris Dawson, a high school teacher and former first-grade rugby league player with the Newtown Jets, had become infatuated in 1980 with the babysitter, his former student at Cromer High School. Chris would move JC into Lynn's bed within a couple of days of Lynn's disappearance in January 1982. But Chris didn't give any evidence in the courtroom of the then Deputy State Coroner Carl Milovanovich in 2003. Chris exercised his right to silence. A key witness was the former teenage babysitter, JC, who had gone on to marry Chris Dawson, then flee him, obtain a divorce, and raise her concerns with police about foul play. At the end of the coronial proceedings, Carl Milovanovich found that Lynn was dead, and he recommended to the Director of Public Prosecutions at the time, Nicholas Cowdery, that Christopher Michael Dawson be prosecuted for murder. But the DPP refused. Nicholas Cowdery was adamant that there was not enough evidence and no body. From that time on, Carl believed that Chris Dawson had evaded justice, despite a compelling circumstantial case against him for the murder of his wife. This is some of what Carl told me as